Hi EDL 633 classmates, this is Kara Pike-Inman and this is my Module 3 discussion board post. My video keeps cutting out, so if there's little weird gaps, I'm going to try to push through it, so please bear with me. For those of you who I have not been in a group with so far, my research is looking at traditional age undergraduate students who choose to pursue non-traditional study abroad destinations. Non-traditional study abroad destinations are typically defined as those that are not within Europe or Australia. And to gather my data, I did a focus group. I had 4 students who participated, 2 who studied in Brazil, 1 who studied in Costa Rica, and 1 who studied in South Africa. For my theoretical framework, the 2 theories that I found that worked really well with this research topic and that I also found definitely to be in play with my data collection in this focus group were a push-pull typology and human capital theory. For those of you who are not familiar with push-pull typology, basically the push side of it is looking at the push factors, which are those factors that motivate students to pursue a certain type of experience. So in this case, the factors that motivate a student to study abroad. And then the pull factors, which are those factors that kind of lead the students to then select a particular program or destination. In terms of human capital theory is looking at all the different aspects of human capital, so financial capital, cultural capital, social capital, all those things that are a part of a student's past experiences and a part of that student's characteristics that may lead them to make certain choices and pursue certain opportunities. And these play really well together, and like I said, they both were really easy to see playing out through these focus groups. So to begin with the push factor, the interesting thing when I started just talking with this group of students was that for all of them they said that it was never a question of if they would study abroad, it was always a question of where and when. And so looking at those push factors that predetermined or kind of predestined all of these students to want to study abroad, I found some things that supported the literature and some that didn't. Something that I found in the literature is that a lot of times students who study abroad, and particularly those who choose non-traditional destinations, have done quite a bit of extensive international travel themselves. And they probably have families, parents particularly, who have engaged in international travel. And the interesting thing with my group of 4 students is that none of their parents had done any prior international travel. While 2 of the students had had parents who came and visited them while they were studying abroad, none of the parents had engaged in international travel prior to the students engaging in this experience. So I found that to be very interesting and potentially a little bit contradictory to the literature. Similarly, while 3 of the 4 students had done some prior international travel, 1 had never been out of the U.S., the other 3 had each only done 1 international trip, 2 to Europe. 1 was only to Greece, so 1 was to one country, 1 was to multiple countries in Europe, and then the 3rd student had only also done 1 trip out of the country, and it was to Brazil, which was where he ultimately ended up doing a semester. So I found that all to be very interesting that, again, these students hadn't engaged in what I would determine as extensive prior international travel. One thing that definitely did support the literature in terms of push factors is that it said that students who had previously studied a foreign language or who wanted to study a foreign language would be more inclined to study abroad. And all of these students had studied a foreign language. Of course, that's a requirement to get into UNCW, so that's not surprising. But 3 of the students, the 2 for Portugal or for Brazil and the 1 to Costa Rica, all helped choose these destinations based on their desire to become more proficient in a foreign language. Whereas the student who chose South Africa, ironically, also chose the location partially due to foreign language because she said that she did not want to study in a country where the primary language wasn't English, but she did want to have the opportunity to study a foreign language while she was abroad. So while she was there, she was able to study Xhosa. In looking at some of the pull factors that influence these students, financial capital came into play with every single one of these students. One of the students said she was an RA on campus, and that's why she chose to study abroad in the summer, so that she wouldn't miss out on her regular semester and year-long RA housing and other benefits. All of the students said that they chose their destinations based upon the perceived affordability of on-the-ground costs in these programs. They talked about how in South Africa they could buy a steak dinner for $8, and in Europe you may only be able to buy a sandwich, if that, for $8. And so how it was very affordable, and that played into their destination selection compared to going to Europe and Australia particularly. In terms of environment came up continuously with these students, that all of them wanted kind of a non-U.S. American experience. They wanted someplace where there was not a McDonald's on every corner, and where there would be less tourists. And with the question regarding the social network, I found it, or support network, I found it very interesting that all of the students, when I asked this, initially mentioned their mom, and not dad, friends, extended family. All of them mentioned, that their mother was very supportive of this, and may have been nervous or worried about them studying abroad, but was supportive. And I actually had to pry to say, does your support network extend past your mom? Tell me more about your support network. And I found that to be very interesting. But all of them did have supportive parents, because I know from my own personal advising experience, parents are often the ones who are very nervous to let their students study in places like South Africa and Brazil. I think those are some of the biggest things in terms of cultural and social capital. I did find that this group of students, each one of them did have some sort of social or cultural ties to these locations. One had a foreign exchange student at her high school from Costa Rica, and that was part of what inclined her to pick that destination. One student had been the president of the Invisible Children Society at her high school, which was a society looking at missing children in northeastern Africa. That was part of what predestined her to go to South Africa. One of the students' brother had worked at a particular embassy and encouraged him to travel. One had a Portuguese instructor that had been particularly influential. One had participated in some of the programming that our Office of International Programs had done. So each of the students did have some of those kind of cultural and social capital aspects at play as they were making their decision. So I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop there. I look forward to hearing about each of your research that you did and the data that you collected. Hope you all had a great weekend. Take care.